Hello and welcome to our Sunday service. I am DeTraci Regula and I will be leading this today. It is April 13th, 2025, and this is a very special day in our liturgical calendar. It is the birthday of the foundress of one of the organizations that we are very close with, which is the Fellowship of Isis, which is an organization founded by Lady Olivia Robertson and her brother Lord Strathlock and his wife Pamela. And it's interesting because both that organization and ours, the Temple of Isis, kind of came into being at about the same time. So there was definitely a mid-1970s current of celebrating Isis that came into being about that time. So we always think of her on this day and revere her impact on all of our lives. She passed away at the age of 96 back in 2013, and we still miss her very actively. She, like our foundress, Lady Lorianne Vanier, was definitely celebrated for her wit and wisdom, and she certainly maintained her wits and her wisdom until the very end. So we are celebrating her. I have a couple of pictures of her. One of these is very similar to how many people will have seen her at our ordinations and at other events in both at Isis Oasis and at the many other centers in the United States too. So I hope you can see her well here in her lovely garb. She always wore very light, flowy things when she was traveling because she was emphatic that she be able to handle her own luggage. And really, I think that sums up Olivia in many ways. She definitely wanted to pull her own weight. She didn't take to being revered as much as sometimes we wanted to revere her, and she planned ahead. So she had, various, accoutrements that she'd carefully selected because they would pack well, they would be light, that she'd be able to move around freely with them. And I had the honor and privilege of traveling with her on several occasions on fairly major trips, in particular one where we were going to Japan to visit our temples of Isis there. And it was really a delight traveling with her. And I enjoyed it so much. She was a wonderful person to travel with. She took any little hiccup in travel plans very, very well. She once said, "Oh, well, I just sit and meditate. If it's, going to be 20 hours wait, I always have something to meditate upon." And she would, and with perfect equanimity, would, sit through whatever delay or challenge might have arisen. And fortunately, on that trip to Japan, everything went quite smoothly until the very end, because she had traveled to Japan from the United States. And so she had a visa or whatever paperwork she needed for the United States. But coming from Japan back into the United States, and this was 20-some years ago, she had some difficulty because she did not yet have her return ticket from the United States to the UK. So this became kind of an issue, and I just checked my bags in onto the conveyor ahead of her. We were checking in together, and so as soon as I suspected there was a problem, as my bags were about to, be moving along into, who knows where, I, basically said, stop the bags. Got my bags off of the conveyor because I didn't know if we were going to end up having to stay in Japan a few more days or what was going to be required. But fortunately, it wasn't too hard, at least in those times, to remedy that. I just took her over to another airline that I knew did have service to the UK, and we were able to buy her a ticket for, a couple weeks in the future, a fully refundable ticket that we could then present to where our tickets were And they accepted that as evidence that she was, capable of traveling on from the United States if they let her back in. So they did indeed, and so we had a few moments of adrenaline there, but it was remedied, and we were able to go on without further interrupting our trip. However, it would have been a pleasure to have a little bit more time in Japan. We were guests of Professor Onuma and his lovely wife, Suki, who were both beautiful people, and he was a retired professor from the University of Tokyo. And he was quite an ardent devotee of Isis. I believe he still is. And so he had a number of students that he wished Lady Olivia to preside over their ordinations. And it was interesting that time because the ordinations took place at a Buddhist temple that had been rented for the occasion. And there were about 25 people there. In addition to the actual ordination process, they had prepared to do a mystery play based on some of the liturgical plays that Lady Olivia wrote. And so we got to see them perform that. It was the story of Demeter and her daughter. And so we were able to enjoy their preparation for that, and then, go ahead and do their many ordinations. And we had a wide variety of people, really from all walks of life in Japan. There was one woman who was of a noble family. There was others that were, just like shopkeepers or students or, housewives or, it was a vast number of people that were quite fascinated with the ancient Egyptian goddess Isis. And so it was very interesting to see it through that lens in Japan. And we also, one moment that we really enjoyed was going to a temple of Jizo, who is the god that looks after children who die young. And so there's often a little cemetery attached to temples of Jizo, and there'll be little toys and things, and sometimes carved into the stones and everything. And that was very moving to experience. And so we felt that was a very meaningful moment. And there were also, bushes that you tied, prayers onto, written on pieces of paper, and many practices that, we obviously share, but then, it was just a little bit different being within the embrace of Japan. And we went to Ise, which by its very name, of course, evokes Isis. There's some interesting parallels in some of the mythology that seem to, go hand in glove with some of the Egyptian mythology too. So it was very fascinating to be exposed to that. And just to be spending so much time with Olivia Robertson, who was such a remarkable woman, such a great brain, so aware of so many things, so well-versed in literature and the arts, and of course the mystical arts on top of that. And when she passed away, the Times of London did a full obituary on her and went into some of her earlier achievements when she was a best-selling author on non-mystical subjects in Ireland for many years, and some of the other things that she did in the world of the arts, and just kind of going over what they called the Celtic rebirth, I think. But she was considered to be a part of that. And when she was growing up, of course, at Clonagall Castle in Ireland, they had visitors. William Yeats was a regular visitor. Robert Graves, who wrote The White Goddess, was a cousin. There were many, fascinating people that spent time in the presence of the very young Olivia, and then she was, survived until just a few years ago. And she traveled alone right through her 93rd year, and probably would have kept going even longer than that, but she did injure her ankle, I think it was, and that was sort of the beginning that, eventually took her into care, and ultimately she did pass away at 96. But what a life. And It's funny because during one of our travels, I think this was when we were getting back from Hawaii, but I'm not positive. In our travels once, I remember we were on an escalator in an airport, and I'm not sure quite what the topic was, but this was when she was about maybe 83 or 84. And somehow this topic of mortality came up, and she said, "Oh well, my guides tell me that I'll be around to see the first of the Earth changes, so I'll be here until at least 2012." And for an 86-year-old woman, back for an 80 or whatever her exact age was, I mean, she was projecting quite confidently about 12 years into the future that she would indeed be alive at that point. And of course, she made it to 2012, and then she died in 2013, which I always thought was quite remarkable. And she'd also told her family, they'd done a big thing for her, I think on maybe her 80th birthday it was, or whatever. Anyway, the joke was, they'd do something even bigger for her 100th. And she said, "Oh, no, I'm not going to be around for my 100th. I'll be in spirit at that point." So she had amazing insight as to her own longevity and what she would be doing at given moments in the future. And certainly everything that I ever heard her say about the topic turned out to be correct. And I'd like to share this photo of her and her brother, Lord Strathlock. It's one of my favorites, and I'm hoping you're getting to see it. I know the reflections can be a little bit odd, but she was certainly a remarkable woman, and he was a remarkable man, and they both had spontaneous awakenings that led them to the faith of Isis and ultimately to founding the Fellowship of Isis. So, Goddess bless Olivia on this, her birthday, and let's see, I believe she was born I always get off by a year, but I believe she was born in 1916, and so that would make this would be her 108th birthday, I think. So, and then of course, within that same year, we lost our foundress of the Temple of Isis, Lady Olivia Robertsons. She passed away in July of 2014. So about 8 or 9 months apart, even though Lorian was quite a bit younger than Olivia, we lost her too. So you wonder about the astrology and what is shifting at given moments, but that took them both from us very, very close together, unfortunately. And it's through Olivia that we have the belief that we do have descent from Egypt and the Egyptian clergy, because her family claimed descent from Skota. Now, Skota may be an unfamiliar name to some people, but it is a word that is said to mean the dark one. And the story is that one of the daughters, probably of Akhenaten, was married off to a Gael. And there's a couple different names for him, but Gael Glass is one of them. And that she then left Egypt and went with him, where they settled first in Scotland, which supposedly takes its name from Skota. So this is very interesting on so many different levels. And it's taken quite seriously. I mean, there are folkloric maps in there's the legend that she gave her name to Scotland, and then supposedly she or her daughter or near descendants went into Ireland. And there are places that are tied in to Skota in Ireland. There's supposedly a spot that is the tomb of Skota, and there have been some Egyptian artifacts found in Scotland from about that period. And people always go, "Oh, well, some antiquarian buried them to hide them," or something like that. And that may be, in some cases, true, or it could be that there were definitely some individuals that were in those lands at a very early time. Certainly the shipping and so on was possible, and there's no reason why Egyptians of some sort could not go into those lands. And recently I was very excited because of this to learn that they've done extensive studies on Scottish DNA. And there is a measurable percentage of Scots that have some Middle Eastern DNA, which is a little bit hard to explain. So these stories, as unlikely as they may seem at first glance, might have more to do with reality than we think. But I'll leave you to decide if that is the way you're going to look at it. Being part Scottish myself, I am delighted to think that I might, through that, have some very ancient Egyptian ancestry, if it would survive. And this is something that Olivia wrote about the priesthood of the Fellowship of Isis. And she said, all beings are children of the Mother Goddess, hence all are in essence divine. Priesthood involves a voluntary acceptance of work undertaken for the divine plan of the deities. Human beings attain priesthood in various ways. Vocation is received from the deities. Reincarnation brings memories of previous ministry, and initiation is given through rite or touch. Heredity gives family priesthood. Priestly authority may also be claimed through occupation, such as the Smiths with their god Wayland Smith, the starry blacksmith in the sky. The Egyptian priesthood was conveyed through heredity or by rights and appointment. The priesthood of the Fellowship of Isis is hereditary in source through the Robertsons of Strathlock. It is passed to priestesses and priests through the rite of ordination, by consecration through oil. The ceremony may also be conducted through attunement at a distance through mutual arrangement. And if people think that ordination by attunement cannot work or really take, I have to say that when I was ordained, it was indeed done by attunement. And this was very much pre-Zoom days. And so this involved international telephone calls and, just even finding out the time differences was a little bit of a challenge. And but we managed to do it. And so while I was being taken through ordination by people here in California, they were putting me through it in the crypt of the castle in Clonagal at the Temple of Isis there. And since it seems to have stuck, I would say that, yes, ordination by attunement at a distance can, in fact, work. The priestly line comes to Lawrence and Olivia Robertson from the Egyptian princess Skota, the Dark One, the daughter of the pharaoh Sincris. Skota was the hereditary daughter of Isis through her descent from Isis and Osiris. Skota left Egypt with her Scythian husband Nell and gave her name to Scotland. The Gaelic race was named after her son, Goldbal or Gaelglas, a little bit different from what I was saying. Lawrence and Olivia Robertson derived the titles priest and priestess Hierophant from Skota in another connection. Those princesses who did not attain the rank of queen by marriage filled the office of priestesses of the goddess Neith or Hathor and bore in their households titles which they transmitted to their children. And this is written by Maspero in the Dawn of Civilization. Hierophant means a guide, one who both leads and aids. And it can also be seen as meaning holy light. You are shining forth as a hierophant. It's a title for people that are actually active in the communities and trying to reach out to others. So you have holy from the hero or hierophant, and phant is related to light. At the gates of the other world, Lady Olivia writes, one often sees the dead welcomed by a goddess who offers bread and water. The deity who thus welcomes the dead is also often Ament, Nut, Hathor, Neith, or Mayat. We are definitely getting some internet storms, I think, so hopefully that's not interrupting too much. So we've had many priests and priestesses ordained here, and we just did one yesterday, which was in a beautiful ceremony. And we will also be furthering training opportunities with our symposium, which runs from May 2nd to May 5th this year. So if you are local to us and you wish to experience some wonderful speakers and ceremonies and other surprises, and also a special labyrinth event at our labyrinth here, please do get in touch, because we would be delighted to see you and help you see some of what we do. And I'm just going to show Olivia's picture again here. It's again with Olivia and Strathlock. So God has blessed you, Olivia, on this your birthday. And I'm sure she is enjoying celebrating it in the other world. And I was thinking about, well, where would I take her? And I remember when I was visiting her in Ireland, there was, she wanted to go to, I think we were going to Wicklow. It might have been Kilkenny, but I think I'm not sure which town it was. And she wanted to go to this pub. I was like, okay, we'll go to the pub. Lady Olivia wishes to go to the pub, we shall go to the pub. And so, we park and pull up and go to this pub, which just looks like a pub. It's, kind of rough looking on the outside. It's downtown and everything. And Lady Olivia is, in full, she was almost like a ship sailing through things. And so she is, just kind of going through, hello, and, she heads immediately to the back of the pub. I thought she was going to the restroom. And she goes through this door and it's, oh, come along. And we go through this door, and suddenly we're in this wide area. It's all glassed in, like almost, a very sophisticated, beautiful environment, with, china plates and the little tea things, the little tea cake towers and all sorts of things. And it seemed to be that the owners of this particular pub, the front pub was for the people that always enjoyed the pub. But, as tourism had picked up and things in the town, they had expanded into this vast area. I mean, it must have been a place that could have held maybe 150 people. And it was, full restaurant with, excellent food and waiters in white, coats and everything. It was one of my moments in travel that just threw me for a loop. And later I encountered a couple of other examples similar to that, but this one was the most vast one, and it was just, really remarkable. And I knew Olivia also was enjoying kind of like, oh, this is the surprise, and so we had a marvelous meal together there with several other people, and it was really a delightful time and a very unexpected atmosphere at that moment. So I was ready to raise a pint if I had to. I'm not much of a beer drinker, I've got to say, but I thought, well, whatever Olivia wants, she's going to get. And instead, we ended up being richly rewarded with a lovely, lovely meal, and one that I've always remembered. And she had such energy, and even, when she did get any sort of little injury or whatever, it usually healed very well and quickly, and she would be back to racing ahead. I remember when we were over in Hawaii, I was traveling with both her and with Lady Lorian, our foundress, and a couple of other people. And Lady Lorian was having some difficulties getting around, and mobility was a little bit more of an issue for her and everything. And so I was, we're all, kind of coming to some spot, and I'm, like assisting with Lorian. Maybe I decide to take her bag or something like that. But literally, I had my eyes off of Olivia for maybe 35 seconds. And I look around, and I don't even see Olivia anymore. And I look ahead, like 2 blocks ahead, the equivalent, and there's, this, brightly dressed colored dot, moving ahead, And it was really something, because she could outwalk and outrace, people that were 20 or 30 years younger. When I was traveling with my mother and Olivia as well, it was the same thing. My mother was much younger than Olivia, but Olivia was the one speeding ahead. And she put this down to an interesting thing, actually. After her brother died, she was quite bereft and did not, did not know how things were going to unfold. And what actually unfolded was an almost 30-year period of intense travel and communication and literature and writing, and it was really a very revivifying time. But she put this down to an experience that she had, where one night she woke up in the middle of the night, and there's a thing in spiritual practices which is called the sun shining at midnight. And this is said to derive from the ancient Egyptian practices. And it is an idea of this, great light shining through in the darkness. And she woke up to this great light and felt that experience which she had was literally gave her a new lease on life. And from that point, she knew that she was not, going to just kind of fade away after her brother's passing. She felt renewed with new energy, with illumination, literally. And so she put it down to that evening, that night, when she indeed saw the sun shine at midnight. And so that, she felt, sustained her through the rest of her days in good order. So I hope you've enjoyed hearing some of these expressions of some of my experiences with Lady Olivia. Another thing she said to me, actually, when we were going through the Temple of Jizo in Japan that I was mentioning to you earlier, was, she was pointing out things to me, and she would go, "Oh, look," and after doing that, she turned to me quite seriously and she said, "After I'm gone, if you may hear me say that, always listen. If I say, listen for me saying, 'Oh, look,'" and I have to say I always have. And in some cases, when I think I have heard that injunction to, "Oh, look," sometimes I have seen something very important or very beautiful. So I would like to think that it is indeed Lady Olivia Robertson pointing out this or that as I go through my days, and as you go through your days too. Remember to look. All right. If anyone else has something to share or suggest, this is a good moment to do so. And do you have anything you want to contribute?
The midnight sun mostly shines on people who are direct communications from the divine in material form. And the difference between the people who wear white and who wear black is that the ones who wear black have seen the sun.
Oh, how interesting.
They're, rather than initiates, they're considered to be representatives of the gods. So the gods speak through them.
So are you suggesting that when they are wearing black, it's to conceal that radiance, or?
Oh no, it's,
Yeah.
it's to symbolize that they are people of the dark side.
Well, that's very interesting, because one of the things I'm working on, and have been for some time, is a little piece on the role of the melanophores in the worship of Isis. And this was a class of the clergy that wore black.
Yes.
And there were others that wore white. But the melanophores were definitely pertaining to the rites for the dead and those that have passed and so on.
And they had to go through the initiation inside the pyramid
Mm-hmm.
at least once. And it was intense. Somewhere around 8 out of 10 of people who attempted to pass through into the divine so they could speak directly died. You know, because you have to give up your soul and make it available to the gods. And some people simply couldn't complete that. So when the reversal happened, where the above goes below and the below goes above, if you're not completely empty, you die.
Not a very favorable outcome in many cases, I guess.
But it's the last test. One way or the other, it's the last test.
Well, for Olivia, certainly it seemed like she was revivified through that. But that wasn't her only interesting experience in the latter years of her life. When she was about 90, she was working in the temple, which is located in the crypt of Clonical Castle. And there's an ancient well there to Brigid. And I've seen, I've been there, and the well, it emerges from the ground, and there's probably, about 2 feet of stone around it. It's circular, and you're already under the castle there. And when I saw it, there was, what looked to be a nice well cover. And in the temple space in the castle, of course, there's all these candles and lights and statues and everything. Well, I guess Lady Olivia was one morning attempting to do something with a hanging lamp, which was over the well. And Lady Olivia was, very slight and light and everything, and she thought nothing of hopping up on the well, at 90, hopping up on the well to do this thing with the light. And the well cover broke. And it plunged her into the well, quite, in a shocking fashion, because you don't expect to do that. It was winter, so it was exceedingly cold, and she could not stop herself. So she was down in the well, in the water. And she said her foot found one foot found a tiny irregularity in the wall of the well. And so she was able to get her foot on that and, just kind of froze in place there for a bit. There was no one to come help her. No one would hear her. There was nothing to do. And so she called upon those around her and the guides and everything, and they said, well, we can be with you, but you must get yourself out of the well. And she was completely immersed in it. So she pulled herself together and managed to climb up back out of the well. And then, got herself out of the well, and then went back through the castle and into more the living quarters of the rest of the family, and literally appeared in the living room, dripping and thoroughly wet and thoroughly cold. And that was her experience with the well. And in talking about this afterwards, as I said, she met everything with perfect equanimity, and it was like she said, well, I'd always heard that if you were going to be truly a druid, that you had to experience, immersion in a well. So I feel that I had that now, and, and she was also rather tickled because it was one of the few stories that her family could tell about her that wasn't, really weird and mystical. And they had, a little bit of trouble with, their very unconventional Olivia. But this was a story that the family could tell, that their 90-year-old aunt or great aunt or cousin or whatever, that she had, plunged into the well and managed to crawl back out of it at 90 and everything. And so it was a good story for the family, and one that she took pleasure in because they could tell everybody, and she was, they just left out any sort of mystical part, and it was still a great story. So she was quite pleased with that. But she just saw it as another variety of initiation, and it certainly was.
She
So
probably encountered the Lady of the Lake to help her do that.
I'm sure she did. I'm sure she did. Well, Olivia could certainly be in that role, and one of the places I was with her at was at Glastonbury, and so, it was not hard to believe in her as an avatar of any of these British goddesses or figures or Arthurian figures. She could transit through them all with great ease. And that was something that she also did in all of her liturgical writings, where she would go through many different myths and present them in the form of dramatic plays, which we still read aloud periodically today, and sometimes do more than just read aloud. We sometimes produce them in much more detail than that. But overall, a remarkable woman. I'm so glad that I had the pleasure of knowing her as long as I did, and I'm very happy to give her honor on her birthday. So, is there anything else we should attend to?
She says she will.
Hmm?
She says she will.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I hope you've enjoyed hearing a little bit about the very remarkable Lady Olivia Robertson. And of course, you can find more information about her online, especially at the Fellowship of Isis Central webpage. You can also, if you wish, look up her obituary on the London Times and elsewhere, as her passing was definitely covered by many. She ended up being buried in the churchyard of the Anglican Church in Clonagall, but not without controversy. There were those in the Anglican faith that felt that this was not the best place for an avowedly pagan priestess to be buried, but nonetheless, the Robertsons were the family of the town, so she ended up being given two services, one in the Temple of Isis under the castle, and then finally she was laid to rest, despite protest, at the Anglican Church in Clonagall, which is over one of the most ancient burial grounds in Ireland. They believe that there are burials dating back at least 6,000 years on the hill where that church is. So she's in good company. Perhaps with a Confederate of Scotia, who knows? All right, well, many blessings, and I bid you a good week. May it be filled with insight and understanding, and may all good things come. Blessings.